Hello everyone, I'm Thomas Leonetti. You to show my presentation video. I hope you're well, you're fine, and you have enjoyed the many conferences that have taken place so far. Um, Today we will talk about my concept, the useful visitor concept, and how to trigger your users' appetites. We've all been confronted with data analysis on our website, and yet we may never have been able to understand exactly how our users were browsing and basically who they were. The concept of useful visitor develops the idea that there are two main types of users, the newbies and the useful ones. And that is essential to understand how and why the useful ones stand by to transform the newbies into useful visitor. So let's go. Data, what for? You may have found yourself having some trouble to understand one curve versus another in Google Analytics, one number versus another in Google Analytics, and often I think, and from my point of view, often we are drowning in the notion of data, and we can't really get the gist of it. So my key point to do that, and this is one of the key of my concept, is that you have to turn data into knowledge. Data isn't just numbers. When you collect data, when you learn from data, you have to turn these data into knowledge. And this is very important because this is what will allow you to go from simple numbers to concrete analysis. As Lord Kevin said, if you can't measure, you can't improve. But I personally prefer to think that if you don't know how to measure, you can't sustain. Without knowing how to measure, you will never be able to sustain your constant UX optimization work, SEO optimization work, etc., etc. And from there, it's important to focus on the four most important questions to ask yourself when you face with your data on Google Analytics. And what are these questions? First, how do I know the real path of a buyer, of a useful visitor, of just a user on my website? I, I, um, I won't teach you that the behavior flow tool on Google Analytics just very non-usable, and that's why. And we'll see later. I'm quite fond of heatmap, especially Yandex Metrica heatmap. So this is the first question. The second question is: have I correctly identified my core, secondary, and peripheral targets? And we'll see later, and we'll talk about later about persona. The third question is: why is the bounce rate of my website so important, and how to correct it? We will also see later that depending on the type of your website, the adequate bounce rate will not be the same, and the way to correct it either. And fourth question, the core of the whole analysis: uh, who are my useful visitor? How do I keep them? And how, above all, do I turn my newbies into useful visitor? So, we put the concept on railway. So, when you face Google Analytics and when you have to turn your data into knowledge, you have to remove the chance factor. So, what is a chance factor? Everything, everything in data analysis starts from raw data, from a mass of data. Um, this mass of data that you will have to study, sort, and analyze to get knowledge, to get to the knowledge. And in this path, you will have a multitude of obstacles. uh, to circumvent or opportunities to build. You have a setup, just a setup of Google Analytics. Maybe you could make a net A/B testing between two landing pages. You have to make some research to know the new features of Google Analytics. You have to create segments, customize segments, and well, you have to analyze all the data. And this is what we saw on this path to go from the raw data to the knowledge. We have a lot of opportunities to build, but you have some obstacles. And then what when I'm studying all the data on Google Analytics, I can imagine or build a real life buyer's journey. But how to build it? What can we learn from the behavior analytics KPI? I told you before that this behavior for Google Analytics so dear to my heart. It's absolutely no readable, and you should study it from 4 different angles, from 4 different ways. One, what is the behavior of the user according to the traffic acquisition? Then, which page or which landing page generates the most exits from the website? Then, is my user looping? Don't just stay on 1 or 2 page and get to the point A, then to the point A, and then to the point A. Is my user looping and can't get to the conversion point, to the funnel? And does it flow easily into the purchase funnel? So you have to learn from this behavior flow of Google Analytics, this 4 KPI. And you have to extract the data and into an Excel board, and you have to know what is this 4 KPI: behavior, exits, looping, and flow into the purchase funnel. And then you could have the primary informations about how your users going into your website. So, which are the solutions in front of this non-readable behavior flow on Google Analytics to analyze the user's path on your website? So depending on what has been analyzed upstream on the user navigation in the purchase funnel, we must set a heat map to complete analytics data. And I'm very, very fond of Yandex Metrica heat map. So maybe you have to test it. And based on the results provided by the heat map, we rework the UX of the low UX design page, rethink the purchase funnel, or both of them. But you have to think about that the UX design of your website is maybe some touch-ups, maybe on one landing page and not on another, maybe on the UX of the purchase funnel just, and not all the website. Or maybe if your numbers, if your data are declining on 1 year, and you see that the bounce rate is very high, you have to choose maybe a total redesign of your website, and not just touch-ups. I think personally that a UX diagnosis is important to choose between a touch-ups or a total redesign of your website. But it is important to have a UX designer next to you. Then, as I said before, it's very useful and even essential to know your target well. You will never be able to complete a data analysis without knowing who comes to your website. And by the notion of who comes to my website, I mean knowing exactly who your persona is. Until a few years ago, only UX designers were in charge of creating personas, and today, for me, it seems necessary, for example, that SEOs take care of it and create searcher personas to analyze concretely, in addition to a social demographic aspect, how the target hearts, how the core target interact semantically with the website. And it's important that the SEO take care of persona and create searcher persona. Um, Persona are useful. Creating a persona is essential to get your target right. This will allow you to determine a typical profile of users or buyers, but the persona can be challenged and must be challenged, I think, by the analysis of your statistics and your data, and you may not have the target you think. So, just a few examples of persona with John to the left and Jordan to the right, and you could see all about John, his journey, his behaviors, and Jordan, her case ceiling points, collateral required, user dimension, etc., etc. So there is both. They're both two great persona to understand how our user is going on our websites. And you have to know that there is a significant correlation between the target, the persona, and the data on analytics. Google Analytics can be used before the creation of the persona to create a brand new one after collecting an adequate amount of data. But you can use Google Analytics after the persona building to redesign an existing one. And to ensure a correct correlation between persona and analytics, you have to create first segments, customized segments. It's very, very, very important. Why am I speaking about the customized segment? Let's now enter into our case study. Creating a customized segment will let you know if you are on target or if you are missing a qualified quorum. Let's take an example of a website dedicated to an at-home weight training program. According to the person in charge of this website, this was its core target: male, 35 years old and plus, suburban, and browsing on tablets. Okay, so you have the core target. Now, let's see our data. You'll see that 34% of the users are between 25 and 34 years old. And then 23 are between 18 and 24 years old. So the majority are between 18 and 34 years old. Then which gender? It's tight, but women are just above the men. What website do our target visit? Media, entertainment, shoppers like Amazon, and food and dining, foodies. So just have a quick vision of the website that our core targets visit. But then, where do they live? The person in charge of the website said that they are suburban, but no, they live in Paris in majority and in the main cities in France, like Lyon, Bordeaux, Toulouse, and Strasbourg. And then you see what devices are they browsing on, and is 68% on mobile and just 2% on tablets. So, as you can see, the main persona of the website was the completely opposite, the total opposite of what was first imagined. Now, name Smith, surname Jenny, age 27, gender woman, living in Toulouse, favorite website cinema, online shopping, and device mobile. Now, let's dig into the bounce rate and the best practices for declining the bounce rate on your website. Before getting down to differentiating bounce rates according to the type of website, it's important to remember what exactly the bounce rate is. So, the bounce rate is the percentage of sessions with a single page view, example session or visits in which the user left your website on the entry page without having interacted with it. But it's important to know what is an interaction for analytics. One interaction for GA is equivalent, at least, to one page view under 30 minutes. So, what are the scenarios for a 100 bounce rate to show up in Google Analytics? So someone visits your site and leaves it immediately. This is the main idea we have about the bounce rate. One person lands on a blog post, spends 20 minutes reading it, and leaves your website. One person lands on a landing page or your contact us page, dials your phone number, and leaves the website. And a person lands on your homepage, watches a 5-minute YouTube video embedded in it, and leaves the site afterwards. So you have to know the concept of the 30 minutes, because I understand that you said that bounce rate is just the first one. Someone visits your site and leaves it immediately. But there are a few more scenarios that for a 100 bounce rate to show up in Google Analytics. So, what are the bounce rates according to the typology of your website? 80% for a one-page website. It's the average bounce rate for a one-page website. 20% an average bounce rate on a portal. 50% it's the average bounce rate for a news content media website. 40% is the average bounce rate on a lead generating site, landing page type. And 30% is the average bounce rate on an e-commerce website. But there is all the data about bounce rate, especially on Rockfuel tool, which offers a different vision of a worrying bounce rate, an acceptable bounce rate, a satisfactory bounce rate, and an exceptional bounce rate. It's an exceptional bounce rate. It's between 26 and 40%, and when you are above the 70% bounce rate, you have to worry about this bounce rate and about the UX of your website and about the web performance of the core vital sign on your website. So, you have to know that a high bounce rate is correlated with the web performance. A high bounce rate should alert you about a too long loading time, about 5 seconds, An outdated site structure, tree structure 2D, page linked together in an irrelevant way, and a not very UX-friendly navigation. The user is lost in conjectures and looping, as I said before, and does not find the information at the right time. So you have a French website on example. The website is loading in 6.7 seconds on average on all pages. The site structure was bad and the bounce rate was 65%. So just below the worrying bounce rate. So you have to know this concept now. The useful visitor, how to trigger hunger. How to study the useful visitor. Tracking useful visitor is easy. You have to go to the custom segments, customized segments in Google, and in the condition of the segments, you select time on page and page view. You will see later what I'm talking about. How to study the useful visitor. You have determined before your targets more precisely, thanks to analytics. You were able to determine the user path on your website, thanks to the behavior flow or the heatmap. You have sorted the pages with how bounce rate from those that capture the attention of the user. And now you have to separate the wheat from the chaff and observe which of your visitors are useful and how they behave on your website. So this is the indicator, the KPI for the useful visitor. The useful visitor is 120 seconds on your website and view more than 2 pages. The useful visitor stay on your site, likes it, and potentially converts. And maybe you can add a KPI is one add to cart. So it potentially converts on your website, but the most important indicators are 120 seconds on your website and more than 2 page views. So, as I said a few seconds ago, how to track the useful visitor. Go to the Add Segment section and go to the Custom Segments and the condition in the segment, and you select Time on Page, 120 seconds, and Page View, more than 2. I already set up the useful visitor just here in French, and it was the same website that our case study, and you see that for an at-home weight program, I will do it in January, just after Christmas and all the food on our tables, and then I'm not so motivated and I'm not quite into our at-home weight program, and I'm just hitting, therefore, a lot of food at Christmas. So we have studied 77 websites, and the useful visitor rate was 3%. It's very, very low. But out of this 77 sites studied, the useful visitor rate increased by 21% when an SXO strategy was implemented. SXO is the UX mixed with the SEO. And this useful visitor rate increased by 21% when we made a SEO strategy, SXO strategy. Out of our 77 sites studied, the conversion rate increased by 32% when an SXO strategy was implemented. So, the useful visitor is the key to your strategy. The useful visitor study answers several questions. Why do these visitors stay and not the others? And how to improve the UX design of the website to capture the neophytes and the newbies and not to lose them. Then, how to improve the conversion rate of this useful visitor, and what are the most viewed page by these useful visitors, etc., etc. And to go further, you have to know that 15% of people working in the web industry are familiar with all the analytics features. And Google Analytics is like an iceberg. You have to see the sea of data. 60 or 80% of the real work and the true risk for analytics journey lay below the tip of the iceberg. It's the emerged part of the data and the analytics. And even me, even if I was certified by Google Analytics, I only know, I think, 60% of Google Analytics now. You have to understand that Yandex Metrica heatmap is one of the best heatmap today. This is free and this is easy to set up. So if you want to go further into your data and the turn to data, the data into knowledge, you have to set up heatmap, Yandex Metrica heatmap to your website. And then you have to take in an interest in analytics certification and just analytics course on Google. Starting tomorrow, dive into analytics to better understand the existing situation to sustain your web marketing strategies, discover new levers to activate to increase your conversion rate, focus on the UX design, on the obstacle to the good navigation path of the user, and to understand the global ecosystem of your website by diving into its data and perform cross-analysis. So, thank you very much. You could find me on SEO with pepperseo.com and another blog, another SEO blog, which called enlargeyourseo.com. And you could find me on Twitter with Yaki SEO, YAKI SEO, Yaki SEO on Twitter. So thank you very much and hope you enjoyed this conference and see you later. Bye bye.